De gustibus et coloribus non est disputandum. There is no arguing about tastes and colors. And yet, in this final week, we'll have a good discussion about tastes and colors. Where are tastes and colors? What is their ontic status? Is there no arguing about tastes and colors because they are subjective, mind-dependent? Or are they, by contrast, out there in the mind-independent world, independent of us? Or are they somehow in between the mind-independent world and our mind-dependent experiences? That's the question that we will address in this week. We'll consider how far we can stretch the idea of properties being, in an older terminology, secondary qualities, or in a more recent terminology, response-dependent. Are there any properties like that? Are there many? Can we perhaps even generalize secondary qualities, as Berkeley suggested in early modern philosophy? Can we generalize response dependence, as Philippe Petit suggested more recently? In this clip, we start with the example of colors, and we'll distinguish between three realist views: wavelength physicalism, reflectance physicalism, and primitivism. And one anti-realist view, eliminativism. Then we move on to a view in between realism and anti-realism called dispositionalism, and more generally what Locke dubbed the secondary qualities. Subsequently, we will consider some recent attempts to flesh out the intuitions of the dispositionalists and develop them into the notion of response dependence, as Michael Dummett and Crispin Wright, for instance, have applied it to values. Finally, I tentatively suggest response dependence as the most neutral and hence rational starting point for ontological investigations, a kind of square one to which a Pyrrhonist skeptic always happily returns. So let's start with colors. Our physical theories about light and how it's partially reflected and absorbed by objects allow us to speculate that colors correspond either with the wavelength composition of the light that an object sends to our eyes, or with the object's reflectance curve, which specifies per wavelength the percentage of incident light that the object reflects. Whereas Smart and Armstrong have developed and defended wavelength physicalism, David Hilbert has developed and defended reflectance physicalism. Arguably, the latter performs a little better because it can account for color constancy. However, both theories face a problem of underdetermination. Stimuli that are quite different in the relevant physical respects, so that are different qua wavelength composition or reflectance, can produce the same color experience in human observers. This problem is known as metamerism, and such stimuli as metameric stimuli. The explanation for metamerism points away from the mind-independent physical world towards the cognitive processes involved in color perception. What metameric stimuli have in common is the ratio of stimulation of the three types of receptor cells or cones in our eyes. According to eliminativism about color, colors are experiences in our minds that we project onto the world. However, there are two further options, primitivism and dispositionalism. Like wavelength physicalism and reflectance physicalism, primitivism about colors situate them in the external world. Unlike physicalism, however, it suggests that color cannot be reduced to physical properties. Rather, colors supervene on physical properties and are unanalyzable. In a way, primitivism aligns colors with the prototypical primary qualities. Dispositionalism about color, by contrast, takes them to be prototypical secondary qualities. The famous and infamous distinction between primary and secondary qualities is introduced by John Locke in chapter 8 of book 2 of his essay concerning human understanding. Locke conceives of primary qualities as properties whose existence doesn't depend on perception. Moreover, our sensory experiences resemble the quality or property itself. So as far as Locke's paradigmatic examples, extension, shape and solidity are concerned, what you see is what there is. Secondary qualities, by contrast, do not resemble what there is out there in the mind-independent world. Rather, they are powers or dispositions to affect us, and more specifically our senses, in a particular peculiar way. Think of a curved, yellow and sweet banana. Our experience of its curved shape resembles its curved shape. Shape is a primary quality, but our experience of its sweet taste doesn't resemble the object out there. Rather, that experience is the strange effect that the sugars in the banana have on us when they stimulate the taste buds on our tongue. According to Locke, objects have such powers to produce sensations in us by virtue of the primary qualities of the corpuscles that constitute the object. So primary qualities are categorical properties, and they act as the categorical basis of the secondary qualities, which are dispositional properties that affect our senses in certain ways. One of Locke's arguments for the distinction is that in contrast to primary qualities, secondary qualities can be perceived by one sense only. The curvedness of the banana is not only something that we can see. If we close our eyes, our sense of touch allows us to feel that the banana is curved as well. As far as primary qualities are concerned, our different senses confirm what we may safely assume to be out there, mind independently. However, we can only see colors. We can't hear or taste or smell them. We can only taste the sweetness of the banana. We can't see or hear or touch it. So we may not safely assume the secondary qualities to exist independently of us. For all we know, they are merely strange effects of mind-independent objects on our sensory apparatus.